want you to click on, and then you're going to simply click on the dot where that takes place, right? So you're going to want to play this until you get 100%. Okay, so the bronchi tubes, the diaphragm, right? And so we're going to play this a couple of times until you get 100%. And then I want you to tell me what your time was for when you got 100%, okay? So go ahead and play that. We're going to do that first, just because I want you guys to get used to the different parts of the respiratory system. And then we'll come back and we'll have an opportunity to go over it together, so that we can kind of figure out what we still need to remember and tell the difference, okay? So everybody, you're going to click on that link that is in the chat, and then I want you guys to play through the game until you get 100%. And then you're going to tell me the time it took you to get that 100% in the chat, okay? So you're just going to have to go through multiple times. So go ahead and go to that, and then we'll go over it together. Okay, great. So that's what you should be doing right now. You should be clicking on that link and playing this game over and over until you get 100%, and then put in the chat your time. Okay, so I got 21 seconds. What about you guys? It is hard, right? We learned about it, but we didn't quite test our knowledge. So that's why we're going to go through. Which one is getting tripping you up, Logan? 30, all of them. Okay, so remember that the different orders of, like, right, thinking about the order of which everything is happening. We know that the way that it's breaking up, we know that it goes from the trachea, right? And then the trachea breaks into the bronchial tubes, and then those break into the bronchioles, and then those goes into the alveoli. It is tough. Yeah, I completely agree. It is, but it is also important for us to learn the names so that when we are answering questions about the breathing and respiratory system, we can accurately describe it, right? So it is difficult, but, you know, instead of trying to think of it as memorizing, try to think of it as understanding, right? Trying to think of like the story and the path that the oxygen molecule goes through in order to get to your blood, right? It is memorizing, but there's research that suggests that instead of just straight trying to memorize, if you think of it as a story, you're more likely to remember it. It gives some sort of context and meaning of a story like line. So if you think about the journey that oxygen takes to go in through your mouth and nose and down through the trachea into your lungs and how it gets down to your alveoli, then it's a little easier to remember, right? There is a whole episode when talking about memory, when you've got those competitions and people who memorize a bunch of letters or a bunch of numbers, they remember it, or a bunch of words, they create a story. And that story is how they remember all of those terms and all of those words and the order in which it, right? There we go. You got it. Great. So you got 31 seconds, you got 100%, Avery got 36 seconds, Spencer and Denny. And what about you guys? What did you guys get? Good. Nice. Spencer, what about you? Good. So now that we're starting to get an understanding of the, hi Cole. Oh, good. I'm glad that you're back. Now that we have some language that we can put towards the different systems, right? We understand the system of the respiratory system. Let's go ahead and try to figure this out in terms of the journey itself. So, right, we want to be familiar with the way that we call things. So that way, when we're talking about the way that it goes and the way that it travels, we already have some context, some vocabulary words that we can use and apply. So this is kind of going back to the whole memorization journey kind of thing that I was talking about. So I'm going to give you the link to this in just a second. But once you get to this link, what I want you to do is you're going to click on begin a new game, and you are going to click on the journey of gases. And this is really going to be talking about how the respiratory system and the circulatory systems work together. And this is really important because, right, we know that our bodies, although we learn about them in individual lessons and we kind of group things and like, this is how this works and this is how this works. What we really want to remember is that everything is working together. We are talking about the respiratory system, but let's not forget that that directly correlates to cellular respiration, right? That's the reason we breathe. So it's important for us to understand the connection between the mitochondria in our cells and how oxygen needs to get to our cells in order for our bodies to break glucose down into ATP, which allows us to use it as energy, which we need energy to be processed at all times. That's why we breathe at all times. When you're sleeping, you're breathing because your body still needs energy to pump your heart and to, move when you're sleeping and let your brain fire its synapses while it's sleeping, right? But the respiratory can't work unless we have the circulatory system. So the respiratory system and the circulatory system work together, right? Because that's how your heart, the circulatory system is your heart pumping the blood and getting the blood all around your body and back to the lungs to get more oxygen and to drop off that carbon dioxide. So these things work together. And so when you're going through this simulation, you're going to really just be following along what it says. It says that the oxygen first needs to enter through the mouth or nose, which we're not going to show, and pass through the throat, specifically the trachea. And so you are going to go through these directions. So you're going to tap or click in order for the oxygen to go down. You want it to go down through the trachea. One goes to the left lung and the one goes to the right lung. So we're going to have it go in and follow, right? And we're just going to kind of follow the directions until we are responsible for making sure that it is working correctly. So I'm going to give you guys this link in the chat, just like I gave you guys the other one. And I want you guys to work through this simulation. And once you're done, I'm gonna ask you guys some questions. And I'm gonna give you guys a couple of minutes, but that is what I want you guys to be focusing on, right? So once you go through the simulation, let me know in the chat and we'll have a chance to talk about it, okay? So this is gonna give you an opportunity to see real time how it works. I'm sorry. Are you having trouble with the game? It also might have to do with just clicking as well. Mm, okay. Try refreshing it real quick and see if that helps. What do you mean by recording right now? Yes, I am purposely recording right now. I want everyone to have a chance to go through this. And then those who are not able to make it, they can at least still follow along the directions and be part of it. Just want to give you guys a chance to go through the journey and kind of learn a little bit more and kind of see more specifically about how things work, right? Because I think that it's so easy to see a picture, but it is difficult to really put that in context when you just see a picture and only concentrated in the lungs. This does a really good job of explaining how it interacts and where it goes and how it works with your heart and diffusion through the cell membrane, and then the difference between an artery and a vein, and oxygenated blood versus deoxygenated blood, and how carbon dioxide goes up towards the heart. So I think it's pretty good at that. And let me know when you are done. Great, Denny and Avery. Good. All right, let's see. Okay, so Cole and Logan. Let me know when you guys are, and Spencer, let me know when you guys are done as well. Great, Logan. Good. So then Spencer and Cole. So as they're finishing it up, let's talk about this. First of all, I want to go back to this guy and I'm going to point. Okay, I'm going to point to a part of the respiratory system, and I'd like you guys to please tell me what part that is. Okay, so just type it in, try to do it as quickly as you can, and if just try to be the first, right? So I'm going to point, and you're going to tell me what it is. So let's start with this guy, with this dot. What is this? The lungs. Good, 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 good. Okay, what is this? It's okay if you misspell it. The trachea. Good. um, it is the trachea. Good. So remember not to confuse this with the esophagus, right? The esophagus is specific to the digestive system, but the trachea is right next to it. It's our windpipe. It's how we get oxygen into our lungs. Okay, now I'm going to ask you one that's a little tricky because these two tend to get confused. Which one is this? It's a muscle. You guys remember? The pharynx. Good, Avery. Yes, it's the pharynx. It's the muscle that allows us to swallow, right? It's where we actually have this flap that when we exercise, it allows things to go in and out. That's okay. That's all that matters is that you're trying, right? Okay, what about this right here? Sounds similar to pharynx, but it's actually something else. Oopsies. The larynx. Good. Our larynx is actually where our vocal cords are. It's our voice box. So we're able to create sound and noise. Good. Okay. What's this stuff? Over here. The navel cavity, good. So we can see that there is a lot of connection, right? Right here, we've got these nasal cavities that specifically brings all of our oxygen from our nose down to that trachea, right? We have this connection right here. And this nasal cavity is more than just the nose. We have something called sinuses over there. And that's why when you get a sinus infection, it really concentrates right here. It's an infection in where there's this very thick mucousy layer that specifically catches germs before they get too far into our bodies. And when that gets inflamed or infected, it starts to create a lot of pressure in that area. It makes it very uncomfortable. But there are two ways that oxygen enters our bodies. What's one of them? What's this guy right here? Nose. And what's this guy? Mouth. Good. So once it goes in, it goes down the trachea. Now, what are these things called? What do we call these things? The bronchial tubes. Good. So that is specific. This bronchial tubes, they break off into two sides and then they go to the what? What are these guys called? These branches, if you will. The bronchioles. Great. Yes, exactly. Okay, so then it goes from good, the bronchioles or bronchioli, good. And then the last little thing, well, the second to last thing, it goes to these things called, Logan, the ravioli. Close, close, the alveoli. Good. And then those alveoli are those little sacs, and that's where we have the gas exchange. Then the last thing is this muscle right underneath. What is this called? The diaphragm, right? And that's when you are a singer. If you are singing, that's where you want to be singing from. That's where you have the max capacity of oxygen, and then you can release it using your larynx. And that diaphragm is that one muscle underneath. Good. Okay, so we understand the different parts. So let's go through the journey. Now, I want you guys to first, oh my goodness, let me close my door so that Pudgy isn't so loud. Okay, so we went through this game, we went through this journey. I want to give us an opportunity to actually do the quiz, okay? So we're going to do the quiz together. You guys did the journey on your own. You had a chance to click through it. So now let's see how well we know it, and we can do this together. So let me just zoom in here so we can see a little bit better. So what is the overall purpose of the respiratory system? Is it all of these? To eliminate nitrogenous waste products, to digest polymers, to make smaller monomers, to deliver nutrients to the cells, or to maintain by exchanging gases? Maintain homeostasis by exchanging gases. Which answer is it? And you don't have to, good, you can just write one of the words. You don't have to write the entire thing. So Logan says maintain. Okay. Is it possibly all? What else? Okay. What are some others? We've got 2 so far. We've got 5 students in here. So we're waiting on 3 more answers. Denny, Cole, and Spencer. What do you guys think? Maintain. What else? All right, Cole and Spencer, what do you guys think it is? Hey. My computer's going a little eliminate. Okay, so we've got eliminate, we've got 2 for maintain. So let's go with maintain because that's where we have the majority. So let's see. To maintain, submit response. Good, that was the correct answer. So remember, we have to be careful whenever we have all of these answers, right? Because it's not necessarily true, although we do tend to go for it, right? So remember that the biggest thing is exchanging gases. That should have really been the big hint here. And then to maintain homeostasis is true, but if you think about what we've been learning, that's okay, no worries. I thought we were doing a quiz together. And then the maintain homeostasis is part of it. That's really important, but if there's one thing that's gonna give you a hint, it's this exchanging gases, right? We didn't talk about polymers. We're not talking about digestion. We know that we are delivering something to the cells, but remember that the respiratory system is specifically delivering gases, oxygen to our cells. Okay, so that's, but good, let's see what's next. Okay, when you breathe in, air passes through several structures in your respiratory tract. Put the following in order from first to last. So what is the first thing that it's going to go through? What's the first thing that oxygen travels in your respiratory system? Okay, so we've got the mouth or nose. Okay, then what's next? Good, 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 good. Lots of people know that mouth or nose is first. Then where does it go? The trachea. Good. Okay, then what? After it goes to the trachea, what do we get? The bronchi. Good. Yes, those two tubes. And then from the bronchi, where do we go? The bronchioles. Good. And then finally, the alveoli. Okay. Let's check it. Good. We are correct. Good. I think the two biggest confusing ones are probably the bronchi and the bronchioles, okay? Those are too confusing just because they sound so similar. But remember that we really specifically call the bronchioles the branches off of those tubes. You might also see this called as the bronchial tubes, bronchi, those are interchangeable. But the most important thing is knowing that the bronchioles are those specific little branches that come off, okay? All right, let's go to the next. Okay, drag the appropriate labels to where they should go. So what is this called? What is this? Is it the alveoli? Is it the bronchioles, the bronchi, the trachea, or is that the mouth and nose? All right, the trachea, let's see. Why is this lagging? There we go. Oh, and what's this? I didn't see that. The bronchi. All right. All right, let's see. Nice. Yep, that's awesome. Yep, remember the bronchi, bronchioles are those specific branches, bronchi or bronchial tubes. That's awesome. Okay, oxygen that we breathe in passes through air passages that end in air sacs. What are these air sacs called? So what do we call the air sacs? Where we actually exchange the oxygen and the carbon dioxide. What are those called? We've got ventricles, atria, bronchi, alveoli, none of these, okay? We've got an answer from Avery. Good. Want some others to share too. What do you guys think? Good, 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 Denny. Logan, Spencer. Good. Logan, I was so expecting you to put down ravioli. Good. So let's click. No, don't apologize. I love it. Great. Yep. We're doing awesome. Hey, Logan, if that's how you remember it, then that is how it works, right? Good, Spencer. Yes. Okay. What happens to the oxygen that enters the alveoli? It diffuses into the lung. It diffuses into the blood. It becomes carbon dioxide. It stays in the alveoli. So which one is it? You know what? The fact that you even, work that hard to remember how to spell it, that is awesome. All right, Avery. It diffuses into the lung. Okay, so we've got to the lung is one answer. What else? Right? What happens to the oxygen that enters the alveoli? So we've got to the lung, to the lung. Okay, what do we think? What are some other thoughts? Spencer, Cole. Is Cole still here? Logan, Spencer. Do you agree that it diffuses into the lung? Okay, okay. Anything else? Logan, what do you think? Yes, but diffuses where, Logan? To the lung or to the blood? Well, most of us are saying the lung, so let's go ahead and try that. Oh no. Okay, so here we have our first incorrect. Good, Logan. Yes, so it does not necessarily diffuse into the lung because if it's in the alveoli, it already is in the lung, right? So remember that the lung is broken down into organized sets, right? We love organization in biology. Organization is a huge part of bio. So when we're talking about organization, alveoli is already part of the lungs, right? So it's already gone through, but specifically, it's not even diffusing through the lung, it's being passed through the lung. It diffuses into the blood. Okay, so it diffuses into the blood, and that's what we want to remember, right? We want to remember that it goes into the blood cells. Good. Okay, so now that the oxygen is transported in the blood, then what happens? It is transported by platelets. It's transported by white blood cells. It's not transported at all. It dissolves in the blood plasma, or it is carried by red blood cells. What is the correct answer? Now let me go ahead and show you all the answers. So how does it get transported? Platelets, white blood cells, doesn't get transported, dissolves in the blood plasma. Or is it carried by red blood cells? Which one is it? Okay, so Logan, you think it's dissolved in the blood plasma then? Okay, what else? Okay, all right. That's okay. Part of this is testing your knowledge, right? We went through a simulation, we read through a lesson, and now we're just testing and making sure, that we remember. So it's okay if you're guessing. How is the oxygen transported in the blood? And then the answers are it is transported by platelets, it's transported by white blood cells, it's not transported at all, it is dissolved in the blood plasma, or it is carried by red blood cells. Okay, so we've got a couple of answers. What else do we have? Denny, Avery, Spencer. What are you guys thinking? How does the oxygen get transported in the blood? Dissolved. Okay, we've got another dissolved in the blood plasma. Okay, dissolved in the blood plasma. Spencer, what do you think? Dissolved. Okay, let's see what happens. Oh man, so it does not get dissolved in the blood plasma. So what do we think is the other answer? So if it's not that it gets dissolved in the blood plasma, that means it must be one of the other ones. So is it transported by platelets? Is it transported by white cells? Or is it not transported? Or is it carried by white cells or blood cells? Okay, all right. So I see most of us are saying white blood cells. Let's try. Oh no, so it's not white blood cells. It does not dissolve in the blood plasma. So let's try, Avery. So let's say it gets carried in the red blood cells, and that is correct. So Remember, we haven't really talked about white blood cells, right? So when we're thinking about our options, we really want to make sure that we are not only testing our knowledge, but also practicing our test taking skills. So if we're looking at our options, we haven't really talked about platelets. They talk about platelets because that is what, if you get a cut, those platelets are what covers the cut to keep the blood from going, right? We haven't talked about white blood cells. White blood cells are specific to our immune system. We have white blood cells when they come and they fight any sort of invader, any germs, bacteria, anything that enters our body that's foreign, we've got white blood cells. So that's specific to our immune response. We know that it does get transported, right? So not transported at all doesn't make quite sense because we know that when we breathe in oxygen, it's specifically to get to the rest of our cells. So we know it does have to go through somewhere. It has to get transported. And then if we look at it is dissolved in the blood plasma, well, we haven't really talked about the blood plasma, and we specifically use the word diffuse, not dissolve. So then that leaves us with this last answer, which is carried by red blood cells. Now, the other thing that I want you guys to remember is that red blood cells have this specific protein in it called hemoglobin. Hemoglobin is that protein that allows the oxygen to attach to, and it gets carried away. And it gets carried to the rest of our body where our oxygen is needed in order for our cells to do cellular respiration and break down glucose to create that ATP to give us our energy that our cells need. So it is carried by red blood cells, right? So if we remember in our video, we see that there's these red blood cells that come through here and that the oxygen jumps in. Now, let me ask you a question. How many of you guys have ever been to a theme park before, an amusement park with water rides specifically? Has anyone ever gone? Okay, yeah, Logan, right? Isn't it so much fun? Anybody else gone through a water ride? Okay. One really great way, of course, yeah. So one great way to think about this. Now, you could also make this argument for a roller coaster in general, but this makes me think of a water ride specifically because it's just so works this way. So if you've ever been in a water ride, right? Think about this. Let's say that you've been on one of those, like the ones with the logs, and you have the really big drop off and it goes into the water and you get all wet and you're like, oh my God. Okay, well, think about when you get in and out of that ride. Usually what's happening is you have a log that's coming down the line for the ride is over here, and you've got this moving platform, right? This log is filled with a bunch of wet people. That is the carbon dioxide. So the carbon dioxide hops out of the log, the wet people hop out of the log, and then a bunch of dry people who haven't gone on the ride jumps in to the log, and then the log takes them onto their ride. And that's kind of what's happening here too. Think about that, right? The wet people are jumping off, the carbon dioxide is jumping off, it's diffusing from the cell into the alveoli to be let go, breathed out, and oxygen is waiting to jump into those hemoglobins or jumping into the log ride to go where they need to go. And that log is the red blood cells, right? The hemoglobin is the seats in the log. So if we think about it that way, we can start to remember that the red blood cells is going to take the oxygen. Those log rides are going to take the dry people to where they need to go until they do their thing, and then they get carried back to the lungs to be released. Okay, so let's go into our next question. What is the oxygen you breathe in used for? Is it used to purify your arteries? Is it used to make glucose via cell respiration? Is it used to make ATP via cell respiration? It is used to eliminate nitrogenous waste products, or all of these. So what is oxygen you breathe in used for? Okay, all of these is one of the options. One of you guys thinks that's true. What about some of you others? What other things do you think it's used for? Hmm. Okay. We have another for all and all. So Spencer, what do you think? Okay, let's try. Oh no. Okay, so it is not all of these, meaning it's only one. And hint, I have been saying this over and over again since we started talking about this respiratory system. So, specifically, what is the whole reason that we breathe in oxygen? Why are we breathing it in? So if it's not all of the reasons, is it to purify your arteries? Is it to make glucose via cell respiration? Is it to make ATP via cell respiration? Is it used to eliminate nitrogenous waste products, right? So remember, I've been telling you the whole reason we breathe in oxygen is for this one thing, for our body to make ATP. Okay. What else? If we got ATP, Denny, Spencer, Logan, what do you guys think? Hmm. Okay, good, Spencer. All right, what about some others? Okay, yeah. Logan, Denny. Okay, we've got one for purify. Logan, what do you think? Okay, well, let's go with ATP because you said purify or ATP, and the ATP is more. So let's see what we've got. And that is correct. So remember, I've said this before, I'll say it again. The whole reason that we breathe in oxygen is specifically to go through cellular respiration to break down the glucose to give us ATP. That's the whole reason. So, if you remember during the electron transport chain or during cellular respiration, even starting with the Krebs cycle, right? We really use oxygen is really big when it comes to the citric acid cycle, or that second part, also considered the Krebs cycle. That's when we really, really need oxygen, right? Oxygen is going to pump out those ATP. It's going to break down those glucose molecules into ATP. And that's the whole reason we breathe in oxygen. And the whole reason we breathe out carbon dioxide is because carbon dioxide is created as one of the waste products, right? So, really important for us to remember that the whole reason we breathe is specifically to make ATP, energy for our cells. Okay. What happens to the carbon dioxide shown in the diagram? So now we've got carbon dioxide, and is it going to become oxygen? Does it diffuse into the blood? Does it diffuse into the alveoli or alveolus? Or does it stay in the blood, or does it disintegrate? Which one? What's going to happen to the carbon dioxide? Now, I just gave you a hint. I just told you what carbon dioxide was, one of them, right? So, what is it going to be? Yes. So, what is going to happen to carbon dioxide? Right? What is the carbon dioxide? What's going to happen to it? Good. Diffuses into the blood is one answer. What's another one? Diffuses into the alveolus. Okay, good. Yeah. What other ones? What other guesses or answers? What else? Okay, so let's go with diffuses into the alveolus, right? So we are going to choose this. Let's see, and that is correct. So remember that the carbon dioxide is the product, right? The byproduct that from cellular respiration that we want to get rid of. We don't want carbon dioxide in our body. We need to make more room for oxygen in our body. Oxygen is what we want. Carbon dioxide is what we get rid of, right? And that also corresponds to the plants. Plants give off oxygen and take in carbon dioxide. So remember that we breathe out carbon dioxide. Well, how are we going to breathe carbon dioxide out? If it were to diffuse into our blood, then it would just stay in our system. And then we would have a really big issue. We wouldn't have enough space for oxygen, and that carbon dioxide would build up and not be very safe for us to be breathing in, right? And so when we have, if it stays in the blood, that's what's going to happen too. And it diffuses into the alveolus because then once it diffuses into the alveolus, we can then breathe it out, right? So good job, you guys. Let's go into the next question. We have about 10 minutes left. So we're just going to finish this up. Okay, where did this carbon dioxide come from? None of these. It is a waste product of protein synthesis and body cells. It comes from the liver and gallbladder only. It was primarily inhaled from the air. It was produced in cells as a waste product of cellular respiration. So, which one is it going to be? It's going to be, you guys. Which one? I can tell there's a little bit of, okay, so when we're, right, we're talking about the relationship between breathing and what? We've talked about this several times. So I'm thinking that, right, we need to remember where this carbon dioxide comes from. And we know that it has to do with something, a specific process that happens in our cells. And so when we breathe out carbon dioxide, we do that because it's what? It Right. Good, Avery. It was produced in cells as a waste product of cellular respiration. Good, Avery. Anybody else? Any other ideas? Yeah. Good. So let's find out, right? Remember, the respiratory system, all of our systems have something to do with one another, and that was correct. Good. So, yes, it was produced in the cells as a waste product of cellular respiration, right? Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah, we were just talking about it, right? I was just telling you that the whole reason we breathe is so that we can do cellular respiration. So the reason we breathe carbon dioxide out is specifically because of that byproduct, right? Okay, let's try this next one. After diffusing into the alveolus, what happens to carbon dioxide? So after it's already left our bloodstream and now it's in these air sacs, does it turn into water? It turns into oxygen. It gets inhaled. We breathe it in. It exhales. It breathes out, or it's destroyed. So then what do we do? Denny says that we exhale it. Good. What do you guys think? Good. Avery, you think exhale too. Logan, Spencer, what do you guys think? Okay. Good. Yes, exactly. It gets breathed out, right? That makes complete sense. It's in the alveolus, and now we're going to breathe it out. Now, this one is going to be a little tricky. Okay, so in this, they did talk about the heart system. And when we talk about the heart system, remember that the heart is pumping blood in and out of our bodies. It's bringing it to the heart. The heart is going to then bring it to the lungs, and the lungs is going to exchange it, go back to the heart, and then the heart's going to pump oxygenated blood to the rest of the body. But we need to be careful, right? We need to think about the words, the vocabulary words that we use to describe the system. So it says the blood vessels labeled A to the right are carrying blood from body cells to the right atrium of the heart. What would be true of this blood? So specifically, we really want to think that the key words in this sentence is that the blood vessels are carrying blood from body cells to the right atrium of the heart. Okay, so what would be true of this blood? It is low in oxygen and high in carbon dioxide. It is high in oxygen and low in carbon dioxide. It is high in both oxygen and carbon dioxide. It is low in both oxygen and carbon dioxide, or none of these. Think about this, okay? If blood is coming back to the heart, then what does that mean? It's already done, right? So if we've got blood coming back to the heart, what does that mean? Okay, so go ahead and look at this question. Think about those answers. This might be our last one for today. What do we think? It's going to be low in oxygen, high in carbon dioxide, low in carbon dioxide, but high in oxygen. What do we think? Any guesses? Anyone want to guess for this one? Yes. Okay, we've got high in carbon dioxide and low in oxygen. So let's try that. And that was correct, right? So if you're thinking about it, if you think about how blood is coming back to your heart, remember that your heart is pumping oxygenated blood out to the rest of your body. And then once that oxygen diffuses into your cells, it's getting rid of that oxygen and it's taking in the carbon dioxide. Sometimes the carbon dioxide can just go through your blood. Sometimes it connects to your blood cells. Sometimes it creates bicarbonate, and then it can travel up to your lungs, right through your bloodstream. And so we want to think about this as when the blood is already coming back to your heart, that means that it already dropped off the oxygen to the cells and it picked up all of the carbon dioxide. So it's going to have more carbon dioxide and less oxygen. So thinking about how it connects. And we are going to stop here. Okay, so which of the following are true about the human heart? We're going to stop here because this is where, we are running out of time, quite frankly. So here's my recommendation for you. All of you have the link to this site. I would recommend, because at the end of this, as a group, we only got 73%. And there were a couple of questions that we got a little confused on. So I would really recommend that you spend some time before you take the test today, going through the simulation again, going through the journey, going through all of that. Go through it one more time, take the quiz again. Okay, just to test yourself to get all of those misunderstandings, because some of it was just simply misunderstandings, and but you got the overall general idea of the respiratory, excuse me, of the respiratory system. You might just want to focus a little bit more on those little specifics about the diffusion into the blood, or where it goes and how it transports, right? So you might just want to go through this one more time, and take the quiz until you get a good score that you're comfortable with. Okay, and then you'll be ready for the test. Okay, but that's what I have for you this Wednesday morning. I do have another class I need to get to though. So if you have no questions left, then you are free to go. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Feel free to come. Feel free to come if you have any questions. Otherwise, have a wonderful day.